Downtown Las Vegas casino in 1977. A dealer at a downtown Las Vegas casino feels something hit his palm before he sees it. A hand slapping down on top of his own. Hard, certain. You paid me wrong. The dealer looks down. 3 black chips sit where there should be more. He doesn't know it yet, but in that half second, money has already moved in a way he will never be able to account for. The man on the other side of the table isn't a high roller. He's 20 years old, and less than a year ago, he was sleeping outside a casino he couldn't afford to walk into. 5 days. That's how long it took him to turn $20,000 into nothing on a strip lit up with money that wasn't his. This time is different. This time, he's not betting against the house. He's not even really betting at all. He's testing something, a theory about what a dealer's eye does and doesn't catch in the half second after a hand has already been paid. His name is Richard Marcus. For the next 2 decades, by his own account, that same theory, refined, rehearsed, and eventually built into a move so fast, it would outrun the cameras built specifically to catch it. T will let him walk into casinos on multiple continents and walk out richer hundreds of times. He will be investigated. He will be detained overseas, more than once. And every time, the same outcome. No conviction, no charge that survives. No frame of footage clean enough to prove what everyone already suspects. Here's what nobody in that casino in 1977 could have predicted. Today, Richard Marcus isn't hiding from the gaming industry. He's standing in front of it, on a stage, getting paid by it to teach it how to stop someone exactly like him. How does a man become both the disease and the cure? It starts on a sidewalk with a card game nobody thought was worth cheating at. Before Las Vegas, there was a sidewalk in New Jersey and a kid who hated losing. By his own account, Richard Marcus was flipping baseball cards for keeps with the other boys on his block when he noticed something. Not a bad run of luck, a pattern. He watched the next round more closely, and the round after that, until he saw it clearly. 2 of the other kids were cheating him, openly, confidently, in a game nobody thought was worth rigging. He didn't get angry. He got curious. If a sidewalk card game was worth cheating, what else was going on? And who else was already doing it, right in front of everyone, and getting away with it? That question followed him to Las Vegas in 1976, where his first honest attempt to win a hot streak at the track. A fortune staked at the blackjack table led to a collapse in 5 days. He ended up exactly where he started, except now there was no train ticket home, just a sidewalk, a strip of casino lights he couldn't walk through the front door of, and a decision to make. So he went in through the side door instead. He talked his way into dealer school, then into a job at the Four Queens, dealing baccarat and blackjack. He was no longer a gambler. He was furniture on the floor, the kind of person a pit boss's eyes pass over without stopping. That is exactly where Joe Klassen found him. Klassen was already a known quantity in the world. Marcus was about to enter an international cheat with a method and a reputation. By Marcus's telling, Klassen approached him after a shift with a proposition, not a script, a baccarat scam at the Four Queens, built around a false shuffle, feeding Marcus's own relief dealer a stacked shoe without that dealer ever knowing it. Here's what made the offer dangerous, not just tempting. Marcus wasn't being asked to bet against the house anymore. He was being asked to use the one thing he'd just spent months earning the trust of a casino that now let him stand inside the count room and spend it on a stranger's plan, on a stranger's word for a cut he hadn't negotiated. Said yes anyway. They walked away with $21,000. It was 1977. And it wasn't the lesson Marcus would build a career on. It was only the first one. The real education came next, when Klassen brought him into a rotating crew built around past posting, adding or removing a bet after the outcome is already known, hidden inside the ordinary chaos of a casino floor. Dealers are trained to watch hands. Pit bosses are trained to watch patterns. Cameras are trained to record everything. None of it matters if the move is fast enough that the eye fills in the gap on its own. Marcus had the fundamentals now. He didn't have his move yet, the one that would define his career, take less than a second, and outlast every camera built to catch it. What he had instead was a stripped-down idea and a name attached to it that he'd never speak without remembering exactly where he was when he heard it. By his own account, the idea arrived inside a strip club, mid-lap dance, named after the woman performing it. He called it the Savannah. Here's the part that's almost insulting in its simplicity. A player sits at a roulette or baccarat table. He places a $5 chip on the felt, visible, legal, unremarkable. Underneath it, angled just enough to vanish from the dealer's sightline, sits a second chip. Not $5. 5,000. The bet is made. The wheel spins. The cards turn. And now there are exactly two outcomes, and Marcus has to be ready for both before he knows which one is coming. Watch what has to happen in that half second. If the bet loses, the $5,000 chip can never be acknowledged. Ed not glanced at, not flinched toward. The hand has to move like it's only adjusting itself, nothing more, while the real chip slides back out of sight and an ordinary $5 chip slides forward to take its place one motion. No hesitation. The dealer's eye sees a hand that touched a $10 bet and nothing else. Because as far as the table can tell, that's all that was ever risked. If the bet wins, it's the opposite problem. Now the hidden chip has to appear revealed, not produced, like it had been sitting there in plain sight the entire time. $5,005. Suddenly visible to a dealer who has no reason to believe it wasn't there from the start. Win, and the casino pays out on money that was never actually at risk. Lose, and Marcus only surrenders the $10 he was ever willing to lose. There is no version of this being in which he loses real money, only a version in which the move fails to disappear cleanly enough. And all of it, the placement, the angle, the swap, happens in under a second. Fast enough, by his own description, that a dealer who'd worked the floor for 30 years would have had to physically lean forward and step out of position to catch it. He says he watched thousands of dealers across his career. Not one of them ever did. That uncertainty was the entire business model. Casinos don't prosecute uncertainty. They present proof. And proof requires a frame of video clear enough to show a hand doing something it shouldn't. The Savannah was built through what Marcus describes as relentless rehearsal and an instinct for the exact moment a dealer's attention drifts to never produce that frame. To feel less like sleight of hand and more like nothing happening at all. It worked on roulette, it worked on baccarat, and it didn't stay small. By his own account, the move generated roughly $40,000 a weekend during one 8-month stretch alone. The team going out, running it, coming back, week after week, while Nevada's gaming control board watched the losses pile up with no idea how. Sit with that for a second. Everyone on the other side of the table knew it was him. Pit bosses, security, the board itself. They just couldn't prove it. Imagine being watched by people who are certain you're stealing from them and powerless to do anything about it for years. The execution was perfected. But Marcus didn't stop at Las Vegas. He took the Savannah somewhere the stakes and the risk to himself were about to get much higher. A casino floor in Las Vegas is one kind of risk. A casino floor in another country, where Marcus doesn't speak the language and doesn't know the legal consequences of getting caught, is an entirely different kind of exposure. He kept going anyway. By his own account, the operation expanded far beyond the Strip into Atlantic City, then overseas into casinos across Europe and beyond. Different countries, different surveillance systems, different gaming laws. The same move, executed the same way every time. More than once, it almost ended differently. Marcus has described being detained in a French casino, held, questioned, and eventually released, because no one could produce footage clean enough to prove what they suspected. He has described a similar pattern playing out elsewhere overseas: suspicion, detention, release, no charge that ever stuck. Picture that room. A man who doesn't speak the language fluently, inside a legal system he doesn't fully understand, facing a casino with every incentive in the world to make an example of him. And they still can't do it. Not because the security teams weren't trying, but because the evidence simply didn't exist in a form a court could use. This is what separates Marcus from almost every other cheat in casino history. Most schemes get caught eventually, because most schemes leave a trace or pattern that surveillance catches, sometimes years later. The Savannah left nothing behind except outcomes. Wins and losses that, taken individually, looked like nothing more than ordinary luck. Nevada's own gaming regulators are reported to have investigated Marcus and his crew on multiple occasions over the years. Flagged, watched, suspected by name. And each time, the same conclusion: certainty without proof, and proof is the only thing that matters in a courtroom. By his own telling, the money wasn't small. Across more than 2 decades, working in Las Vegas, Atlantic City, Monte Carlo, and casinos beyond, the team's total take has been described in the millions, a figure Marcus himself has cited differently across different interviews, and one that likely can't be independently verified by anyone outside the crew itself. What can be verified is the pattern, not the total. Detentions in multiple countries, repeated investigations at home, and not one conviction that held across more than 20 years. The system built to catch him had every advantage: money, technology, motive, and time. It had all of it, and it still couldn't close the case. So if nothing was working against him, if every door that could have ended his career stayed open, why would a man like that ever choose to walk away on his own? That's the part of this story almost nobody asks about. Because every other cheat in casino history answered a different question instead. Not, why did he stop? But how did he finally get caught? Marcus never had to answer that second question, which means the first one is the only one left. There's a version of this story where Richard Marcus gets caught, where the cameras finally get good enough, or the crew makes one mistake too many and 2 decades end in handcuffs. That is not what happened. By his own account, Marcus walked away from the only profession he'd had since arriving broke in Las Vegas decades earlier. Not because security finally caught up to him, not because the Savannah stopped working. He chose to stop. By his own account, he had been pushing his luck specifically in Las Vegas, running a scheme the gaming control board knew was his and still couldn't prove. Again and again, daring them to catch him. Surveillance technology was advancing. The margin that had kept him safe for so long was narrowing, even if it hadn't closed yet. But narrowing isn't the same as closing, and a man who had already talked his way out of detentions on multiple continents had every reason to believe he could keep beating the odds a little longer. Instead, he stopped while he was still ahead. There's a specific kind of discipline in that decision that's easy to miss in a story full of casinos and stolen chips. Almost every famous criminal case ends the same way: a one more job, one more night, one mistake that undoes everything. Marcus's story doesn't end that way. He retired the way a professional retires from a career, not the way a criminal gets pulled out of one. He went on to publish American Roulette, laying out the entire run in his own words: the crew, the recruitment, the move, the close calls overseas. More books followed, including Dirty Poker and The Great Casino Heist, widening the lens to cheating across the wider gambling industry. Think about what that decision actually risked. For years, the only thing standing between Marcus and a courtroom was the absence of proof. By writing the books, he he was handing over the one thing the Gaming Control Board had never been able to get on their own: his own account, in his own words, of exactly how he'd done it. He wasn't hiding any of it anymore. He was the one telling the story now, on his own terms, to whoever wanted to listen, and betting, one more time, that it still wouldn't be enough to convict him. That bet paid off too, and it was about to do something none of his cheating ever managed. It was about to get him seen by exactly the people who'd spent 2 decades hunting him. Richard Marcus stood up in a room full of casino security professionals and told them exactly how he'd beaten them. By his own account, it was the first time the industry had heard a real professional casino cheat explain his own methods, in his own voice, to the people whose job was to stop men like him. They were stunned. And inside that stunned silence was the beginning of an entirely new career. The casinos that spent 2 decades trying to catch him started paying him instead. Since then, Marcus has worked as a casino security consultant, hired specifically because of what he knows. Not what he's read about cheating, what he did for over 20 years on tables exactly like theirs. Think about what that actually means. The same instincts that let him slide a $5,000 chip onto a table in under a second, invisible to dealers, invisible to pit bosses, invisible to cameras built specifically to catch it, are now used to train the people standing on the other side of that table. To teach them what to look for. To teach them what nothing looks like right before it becomes something. It's one of the strangest career pivots in the history of organized cheating. Not redemption in the way that word usually gets used. Not punishment, either. Just a man whose value to the institutions he once robbed never disappeared. It simply changed sides. Go back to where we started. 1977. A young man standing outside a casino he couldn't afford to walk into, looking up at lights that weren't his yet. The cameras. The pit bosses. The systems built layer by layer, over decades, to stop exactly one kind of person. For more than 20 years, that system never caught Richard Marcus with anything that held up. Now, on that same kind of casino floor, there's a security contract out there with his name on it, and the same eye that once read a dealer's blind spot in half a second now reads it for the house. The man who beat the system for 2 decades didn't end up broke, in prison, or in hiding. He ended up back outside those same casino lights, except this time, they let him in the front door.